I wanted to start actually with a moment of gratitude. I always like to start that way, just to thank you for showing up here today. Whether you're showing up to support me, to support Ingo, to support yourselves in thinking about the 2.0 level you, one habit at a time, I just really appreciate it. It's a good decision. There are a lot of things that we could be doing today that are less healthy and less helpful. And so I just, I respect you and honor you for showing up today, and a moment of gratitude to my friends and family for always inspiring me to be in service. And a huge shout out to Ingo for the School of Becoming, this initiative that you've created to create the space for each one of us to be able to give back and to try to find some comfort and even some sense of purpose, perhaps, during these unprecedented times. So without further ado, here we go. Just a tiny little bit about me is I'm in the business of not only imparting skills, tools, models to leaders across organizations and firm-wide culture, is then also in helping leaders develop new habits. So it's all well and good if we learn a new tool or we have the best of intentions, but if we're not using it, then we don't get very, very good at it. But the reverse is also true. And what we have found in the research today is actually, it's usually during a major life change, like pregnancy or a pandemic, where we're actually open to switching things up. Now, I've heard some funny things like people switching from bottled wine to boxed wine during this time. So that's an interesting new development. And more purchases of things that are non-perishable that stay on your shelf, like Chef Boyardee. On the flip side, I've also heard of people exercising, downloading YouTube and watching some fitness videos that way, learning a new language, and so on. So this will be an opportunity to meet you where you're at. Maybe during this time, it's about getting out of bed. Maybe it's about exercising 3 more times a week. I'm going to meet you where you're at, and for you to be thinking about what is the 2.0 level of you. And yeah, my company is called Kirke Leadership, and I love my clients, and a lot of you are on the call today, so thank you for being here. This is a quick note about the agenda. Is I want to get us into the mindset for habit building. It can be really tough to do if our brain is not open to it and we're having a tough time, and it is tough times right now. So we'll get into the mindset really quickly. Then I'm going to do a habits explained. That's going to be a quick review, really, of habits, how long they actually take to form. And then I'm going to go into one tool of the neuroscience, which I think is going to be quite helpful. I've developed a tool called the Habit Builder, which is a 3-step approach that we're going to work through. And you're going to have 2 opportunities to connect with others on this call to work through that. So my goal is, during this session, that you're able to leave here with a practical tool and a new habit that's going to help to contribute to the 2.0 level you, and you're going to socially declare it here today. So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to share a couple of resources and maybe time for a Q&A at the end of that. What I'd like you to do first, and I often do this in my workshop, is get into the right mindset. And to do so, there's an area of the brain called the limbic system. And I have to be careful because I do have a few people on here who are actually neuroscientists. So thank you for being here. And I'm sure you're going to keep me honest here today. Anyway, in the limbic system, we process emotions, and that can be quite helpful or unhelpful. But what I have found to be helpful is really just honoring the emotion and naming it. And when you name it, also supported by the work of Eckhart Tolle, we stop battling whatever feeling that is and just honor it. So what I'd love for you to do is use this great emotion wheel that you see in front of you here, which is done by Dr. Plutchik. And in the center are common emotions that are quite accessible to us. And the wheel helps us expand our emotional vocabulary. So what I'd love for you to do is just go ahead, take a look at the wheel, and decide right now, how is it that I feel? And what you're going to do, we're going to choose courage over comfort in the words of Brené Brown. And you're going to write in the chat the one emotion word that you feel right now without any explanation. And you're just going to put it down. There's no judgment. Whatever it is, on the joyful side, maybe it goes into energetic and stimulating even. Or maybe it's on the sad side. Maybe you're feeling lonely or isolated. Also understandable. So go ahead and put that in the chat, and I'm going to start to see. Creative, peaceful, serene, sad, thoughtful, anxious, grateful, anxious, overwhelmed, pensive, content. Amazing. Lots of hopeful, proud, isolated, and angry. Thank you. Pensive, pensive, responsive, anxious, creative. So good. And maybe there's an emotion word that's not even on there and you could make it up. Totally okay with that too. Aware, energetic. Good. So this tool is really empowering for us to expand our emotional vocabulary, honor it, name it, and let the stillness take place. And once you've done that, we can actually move forward. So without explanation, we're going to continue. Thank you so much for sharing. I like to add a little humor to this. Whether you're feeling anxious, joyous, peaceful, or not, the fact that you chose to be here and to develop yourselves over a webinar means that you're awesome. I'm an evidence-based coach, so that's the evidence that no matter what, no matter where you're at, you feel a certain thing and it doesn't own you, and it's a temporary feeling that's fleeting. It passes through you, so you're not, I never say I am sad, I say I feel sad, and that's a moment in time. But honestly, you are awesome. So with that in mind, to keep that in mind, now we can open up to habits. This is a very quick touch on habit. On the left-hand side, I've defined it. It's based on reading a lot about habits. So I like the work of James Clear in his book, Atomic Habits. Maybe a number of you have read that. The work by Charles Duhigg, I use all the time in my innovation workshops. Mel Robbins, I'm just obsessed with her actually. Brené Brown, Gretchen Rubin, you name it. So a lot of people have helped to formulate how I view habits. And really, it's a bunch of decisions that you make. And over time, a decision that you make repeatedly might even become subconscious. You might even turn it into the autopilot function of your brain. And what it really does is when you do something over and over again, you don't even think about it. So you don't even need to make that decision. It actually frees up capacity in your brain to be able to make even more complex decisions. So over on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see point number 1 is that the research is saying that habits explain at least 40 to 50% of our behavior and what we do, which is a lot. So it's really useful time to be thinking about what are my habits and what am I doing that I want to continue? What am I doing that I want to stop doing? And what might I add to that for the 2.0 level me? Point 2 is that, yeah, repeated, it becomes automatic. How convenient. 3 is that there are good habits and bad habits. So you get to choose. And what Dr. David Rock is saying, is he does a lot of work in the space of neuroscience, is to pick one, stick with it, start small, make it easy, accessible, convenient, all the things, and you're much more likely to succeed. Some of the photos I have on the bottom left are just some examples of habits. In the middle, you see somebody exercising. On the right, you see somebody meditating, perhaps journaling in the top left, or maybe it's dressing up your dog. Who's to judge? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'd like to give you an opportunity to chat with some people. So Ingo is going to put people into breakout rooms just for 5 minutes. So if you choose not to go into the breakout rooms, we'll stay here in the main room. But I really hope that if you can, that you'll turn on your video and that you'll go into the breakout room. A button will show up and you'll click it to join that breakout room. And here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to do quick introductions so you can meet some people on this call. And the second thing is I want you to share what are some good and or bad habits that you've adopted recently, particularly during this time. Okay. And so as you're coming back to the larger group, some of you might have been interrupted, which is okay. You're going to have another opportunity a little bit to connect and share with some others. What I'd love for you to do is share in the chat a couple of the habits that you heard. What did you hear? So anyone can go in there now, share the good, bad, and ugly. Staying up later and waking up later. Marlene, yeah, that resonates for me too, I have to admit. Drinking more, yep. Checking news too often. Yeah, we'll talk about that, checking news too often. There's a very clear neuroscience reason for that, in fact. Or drinking cheeky, like gratitude bowls. Ah, that's very cool. Reading too much. walking and meditating, spending more time with your loved ones. That's amazing. I'm finding that more and more loved ones are learning about new mediums of conversation like video chat, which is really fun. Going on live safari online daily. Wow, that's so cool. There's some really neat museum tours that we can take now for free, some musicals. Harold, so good to see you. Studying before and after work, amazing. A gratitude bowl, this is very cool. Connecting more, journaling more. I'm going to admit to you, I've got some good habits, I've got some bad habits. One of my bad habits is isolating myself as a solopreneur. I do tend to operate as an island, and I've just realized that's not okay. There's a thing right now called geographical distancing, which we're all being asked to do. But heck no, on the social distancing, that's being encouraged is actually to create social connections. So more and more I'm learning to stop operating as an island. Yoga is so helpful. Finishing every meal with chocolate. I approve. I'm not sure if I'm a good influence or a bad influence here. Bad watching news and Netflix too much. Hello, Mom. Love you. And appreciating the small stuff. Absolutely. So my mom has been so inspirational in my life, and she's always said, when you're feeling down and you need love, give love. And so however I can be in service, that always picks me up. Chan, positive, regular new home workout. This is amazing. Thank you so much. So hopefully you're deriving some connection and some creative solutioning here with each other. Thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it. So here's a little bit of a truth bomb, everybody. Is often, this would be me to say, you know what, I don't have time to build a new habit. Like there's so much going on. How can I even think about the 2.0 level me, Jojo? My goodness. But you know what? The truth is that this dog over here is also me, sipping my wine, spending a lot of time watching too much Netflix or even watching too much of the news. So you know what? I do truly believe that we all do have some capacity to develop a new habit. And I think that what you prioritize gets done. So I'm going to share just a little bit about the neuroscience. And again, my neuroscientists in the room keep me honest. This is something called the SCARF model. The SCARF model, SCARF, you're going to see those 5 social elements in the middle circle, the middle purple circle: status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And what Dr. David Rock is suggesting is that these 5 elements need to be in harmony. And if one of them or any mixture of them are off or dissatisfied, then the brain goes into threat mode. The reason why my arrow for threat is bigger than my arrow for reward state is because the brain is much more apt and hardwired and programmed to be scanning for threat every 5 seconds, faster than a hornet flaps its wings once. And the threat state that the brain goes into when, let's say, I'm living in uncertain times, voila, like today, is that we revert to old behaviors, unhealthy habits, comfort, things that are more comfortable, or a fixed mindset, if you will. So you can imagine during this time that we have here, 2 of these elements are particularly important. I'll describe them. So status is about feeling my relative importance. Certainty is, do I have information to feel empowered? Autonomy is, do I feel like I have choice over how I do things? Relatedness, my social connection. And fairness is about, well, do I view things as fair or not? And so during this time, Dr. David Rock is saying in particular that certainty and relatedness are being dissatisfied in the brain, leading us to be more apt to go into that threat state and less apt to be doing this, a webinar on thinking about the 2.0 level you. So if we can get from, you know, a level 3 state of threat, if you will, as Dr. David Rock describes it, level 3 state of threat is where we can barely cope. Level 2, each one of you must be in a higher level to be able to be joining this webinar here today. But if what you need is a glass of water and to relax and get comfortable, that's what you need. And I'd like to meet you where you're at. If you're at level 2 threat, it means that you can do, you know, other tasks, get involved. In level 1 threat, it's a little bit lighter. So depending on where you're at and what you need, you might want to be thinking about, what do I need in order to get my brain into a reward state, to move to the right? Maybe I need a little certainty. But if I watch the news too much right now, I'm going to go into threat state. If I watch just enough to keep informed, and then think about what is true. What's my evidence here today? I start with gratitude. I'm okay. I have food. I have toilet paper, things like that. I have people in my life. That is certainty as well. So you can give yourself back some control and move to the reward state to think about the 2.0 level you. Or you might want to think about relatedness, which I have starred here as well. Am I connecting enough? Just meaning for my brain to feel happy. There's no obligation here. It's just, what do you need in terms of social connection right now via video, or even just going for a walk by yourself, but being able to see people from a distance is helpful. So what do you need to do in order to satiate your brain so that you can move to reward state? I'm just going to check the chat just to see if anybody has a question about this model. Positive teaching my children. Hi, Reuven. Amazing. So good. Yeah, this is a really helpful tool that I show in almost every workshop. And just for each one of us to be thinking about, what do I need from status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness to be able to move myself over to reward state? And if I'm not in reward state, I'm in threat state, what is missing? What do I need? This is also a great leadership tool to help check in with your people. What do they need? How can you empower them to help them move to reward state? Okay. So what we're going to do is an activity now. At Kirk Leadership, we have developed this tool called the Habit Builder. It was attached in the PDF to the chat, but for many of us, we're having trouble downloading it. So what I'm going to do is we're going to send this to you. Every one of you is going to get this tool. And you can see it blown up on the right-hand side of the screen, that there are 3 component parts to this simple tool. I basically put together and curated a whole bunch of really important thought leaders in this space of habit building, and put it all together in a more simple format so that we could actually move it forward. I'm all about practice and moving something forward versus a lecture. So the first thing that we're going to do is build belief. Second thing is that middle section there, we're going to create one habit, one row of that habit plan, and you're going to pick something that's awesome, that's good for you, that you're excited about, and that you're actually going to do. And then the third thing is I'm going to just describe to you what is this concept called the habit loop. Some of you might know it through design thinking or through some reading by Charles Duhigg that was expanded upon by James Clear. I'll go into that. So there will be a short piece on that to help you really understand, how do you sustain this habit and make it come to life? Okay, so that's what we're about to do. First step, you're going to take a piece of paper and a pen, or in your head, if you don't have one, that's okay. You're going to list 3 positive words about yourself. You can see on the right-hand side for the habit builder that that's the top portion of the form. So we have to start with positivity. We have to believe that we can actually develop a new habit in order to do it. So I've got to get you, it's mandatory to put down 3 words that are positive, that describe you without judgment. For some people, it's like, yeah, it's this, this, and this, clear. For some other people, it might be a struggle, and that's okay. When I was thinking about it for myself, I thought, maybe kindness, flexible, and open-minded for me. And I think those 3 things are very helpful in the space of habit building. Kindness and kind to myself too. That's where I need to also place it, not just to everybody else. So take another minute to write down your 3 positive words about yourself. Okay, and if this were live, I'd be walking around the room and I would be checking and I would be saying, no, you can't just put 1, you need to put at least 3. And good on you if you put 10 down, wonderful, but you have to have 3. Okay, great. Go ahead in the chat. I want to hear Put down one positive word about yourself in the chat to humanize this and make this okay. So I'm going to check in on you and see what everybody has put. Energy, yes. Compassionate, curious, oh yeah. Kindness, loving. I quite love this group of people, I must say. Dedicated, truthful, amen, that's awesome. Positive, hungry to learn. Growth mindset, I love that. Yeah, empathetic, you definitely are. Appreciating, committed, resilient. Wow. Ayana, so good to see you. Yes, it's so true of you. Okay, you're all amazing. Great. That's part one, done. Keep that in mind. That's going to give you the belief that you can adopt a new habit that's going to take you to the next level. All right. So part two of this habit builder is what you see on the screen here. So it's this big chunk, but don't let it intimidate you, because all we're doing, I highlighted it in yellow, is picking one area of focus that you'd like to build upon today. Look at the left-hand side of the screen here, the what. Of course, who did I draw this from? Simon Sinek. The what, the how, and the why. That's how I started off this template. So the what is your category of habit. It's either business, career, leadership, could be health, family, finances, going on down. Maybe it's spiritual. Maybe it's energy. Maybe it's mindset. So whatever you're already doing, okay, you're awesome. Now what's the next one? The next habit, this one, the 2.0 level that you're going to do. Maybe it's taking health to that next level of activity. I have put down a couple of examples of fleshing out the template across the row. So if you look at what, I'm going to use health as my example. So look at the bottom row here. So health, that's my what. And my how is the habit. It's the goal. So my goal or habit is going to be to run at least 30 minutes every morning at 7:30 a.m. For me, that's lofty. Maybe for you, you're laughing at it right now. But for me, that's a good 2.0 level. Before I was exercising, maybe 3 times a week, maybe once a week if things got really busy. But that's my how. And then in the why, you need to actually put down why you're doing this. And if you don't have a good enough reason, you might not be motivated to actually do this. So I want you to think of what would be a good benefit, maybe to others, but also certainly to yourself. For me, it's to be able to climb all of the mountains on my bucket list. I would really like to climb Kilimanjaro, for example, do the Inca Trail in Peru, etc. And I know that to be able to do I need to be practicing now. Okay. So the next one that we're going to look at here are the motivators. What are some things that are going to propel me to action and keep me honest and keep me doing it? I have picked Mel Robbins' idea of momentum. And what she says is count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then just go. I also tend to partner that thought with Tony Robbins, who says don't negotiate. If you're developing a habit, as soon as you start negotiating, it becomes a decision, and then you're likely to not do it. So don't negotiate, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and go. The other thing I've put down in my motivator is to schedule it. I feel that whatever gets scheduled actually gets done, so I'm going to calendarize it. I have put down all kinds of motivator ideas on the bottom right here, drawing from the best of the best. So make it accessible. For me, it's running outside, so I don't need to go to a gym that's probably closed today. Make it easy. So for me, 30 minutes, that's good for me. Visible, I put my gym clothes right on the edge of my bed. So they're right there. I wake up, I see it's like, right, a visual cue is huge in this space. The momentum I talked about, the mindset, believing I can, right. Stacking is something I want to share with you. So stacking is when you take an already existing behavior and you stack another habit onto it. It's kind of like the next level. So since isolation started, I've been running every day. So I'm good now. And I really needed to start taking my vitamins. So I do the run and I stack that with vitamins after. So maybe that's a motivator for you to stack it with vitamins, but who wants to go through? I have a lot of vitamins I need to take. But what I do is I use my soda stream. I add a tiny little bit of mango syrup in there, just a tiny bit, not to be counterproductive to my original goal, just a little bit to make it like desirable. And that temptation of that reward, the anticipation is actually more palpable and more motivating than the reward itself. So I know, okay, I'm going to go for my run. I'm going to take my vitamins with that juice. And I'm also going to, as I put in the reward, have a really great cup of coffee after my run. And because I want that coffee so badly, I'm going to go for my run and do it. And then for trackers, people often ask me about, you know, how could I track this? What's the best tracking device? And what I say is that it works for some people and it doesn't work for some people. So I don't put too much emphasis on it. I feel for me that a tracker actually takes up more of my time. Now there's another step to do, but some people really like it. Some people like the visual of having a calendar and checking it off when you've done it. And that's awesome. For me, with this one, I have the health app on my iPhone. So in here, there's actually an app that says health, and I can actually see how many steps I've taken. So that's what I'm going to use. So what I'd like for you to do is now flush out one row. You're going to pick one what habit, the category. You're going to put the how, why, motivator, reward, tracker if you want one, and be prepared to share. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to do that independently. I'm going to check the chat here. Pratik is going to visit your optometrist, I'm sure, when things open back up again. I think that would be really great. Yeah, so what I'm taking from that is on the slide, it's very small. In the handout itself, it's a little bit bigger, just a little bit. So you'll have that coming to you. Everybody is going to get this attachment after the session. And Peter, yeah, fair enough. And for Rachel, how does stacking work if your goal is to remove a bad habit? We're going to talk about the habit loop after this. And what's really helpful is that you really want to make your old behavior inaccessible and out of sight and take away the temptation. So if, for example, you check your phone as soon as you wake up, and that's disturbing your grounding, your inner hero, as Robin Sharma would say, or maybe your quality with time with your partner, for example, then maybe you take your phone and you put it in the other room so you don't have that access to it, and you find another way to wake up. Maybe it's on an alarm clock or a watch. So you get it out, you move it away, and you make it dissatisfying to do it. And you make the new behavior really satisfying, really rewarding, and visible. So I'm going to give everybody another minute to, on a piece of paper, be writing down their what, how, why, motivators, reward, and tracker. Let me know if you have any questions in the chat. Be prepared to share. So in just a minute, we're going to get you into breakout rooms to help each other flush this out. Does anybody have a question at all? I get to now scroll and see everybody's face on the video. Oh, it's so good to see everybody. The smiles that just came up. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so a couple of questions. One is, I find reward really hard. Yeah, so what reward could be more simply is the reward of dopamine. So Charles Duhigg and James Clear talk a lot about that in terms of whatever you do, it needs to give you that dopamine hit that makes it really satiating to do that reward. So maybe it's a joyous feeling, and maybe it's creating space in your day to reflect on it, to be able to think positively. There's an author named Dr. Rick Hanson who has written my favorite books of all time, one being The Buddha's Brain, another one being about hardwiring your brain for happiness. And in that book, he says, we linger a long time on the negative stuff. The brain is hardwired to do that, also says Dr. David Rock. But what we don't do as well is linger longer on the good stuff. So maybe the reward is to linger longer on the positive feeling that you have from doing that habit that day. So it might be the feeling, the thought, the reflection. It might be a coffee. You just don't want the reward to be too counterproductive to what the goal is. So if the goal is to feel stronger, then maybe the reward isn't to drink a 2-4 after that, obviously. But maybe it is to treat yourself with a Starbucks. Maybe it is to order that favorite meal that you've been waiting for that week. Fox one. Let me just see. And how does accountability come in? Yeah, thank you for that question. So that came from Catherine. Yes, such a good question. So I'm going to get you to look on this slide, the motivator ideas. You'll see halfway down, there's accountability. What I love from Gretchen Rubin, from seeing her live and reading her book is called Better Than Before, and she also has the Happiness Project, is that the majority of us are externally motivated. And what that means is we perform better when somebody is watching or when somebody's supporting us. It can be really tough to have good eating habits when your partner likes a lot of chocolate and chips and it's around and you're not aligned. I appreciate the struggle around that for sure. What's helpful is that perhaps you have an online friend who helps keep you accountable. Maybe you have a coach. Maybe you join a network or a group. Perhaps you tell somebody what it is that you're doing, like with leadership. So a good leadership habit is to coach versus direction. And maybe what you could do for accountability is ask your employees. So the next time we have our team weekly one-on-one, I want to coach because I believe that builds confidence and competence. And if I tell you what to do, I'm micromanaging. So what I'm going to ask you to do is call me out on it. So my motivator is accountability of my people holding me accountable. And maybe we could do that through a funny signal. Maybe they can pull at their ear or touch their nose or just say micromanaging, depending on your relationship and what's best for you. But accountability is a huge factor. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay, we are now going to get you into breakout rooms. If you choose to stay in the main room, I'll be here gabbing away with Ingo and try to draw some people out as well. But hopefully you'll join the room and you're going to share with others that row, that thing that you're going to commit to. And maybe somebody's going to have a helpful suggestion to you to think about, perhaps a motivator or a reward. Perfect. So over to you, Ingo, to get people into their breakouts. And one of the best practices they say about the how, or like the actual habit, is that it's specific. So I think you did a really good job with that. So the more specific you can make it, time bound, and also if you have a location, that means we're more apt to doing it. If I just say, oh, I'm going to exercise more, am I? But if I say that every morning at 7:30, I'm going to run outside, I know specifically what I'm doing, and for 30 minutes, okay, or more, then I'm really specific and much more apt to doing it. So for anybody who has a habit that needs a little bit of specificity to it, you can go ahead and do that as well. I know we're not going to have a lot of chance to talk with each person about their goals, but for anybody who would like to connect with me after, that would be great. Very quickly, I'd just like to show you this very important concept called the habit loop. So the habit loop, Charles Duhigg, I really want to honor him and his thought leadership around it. I've adapted this slightly. So I've got his work with a cue. So there's some trigger that leads to a certain behavior, and then you get a reward for that behavior. But what I've added here is getting out of the old behavior and what is the new behavior. The new behavior is the habit, the how that you just wrote would go into that new behavior. But what's really important for sustaining this or for changing an old habit that you had. So I really appreciated one of the questions that we had here today from Rachel was to, you can identify what was that old habit that you used to do and replace it with a good habit. So I'm going to give you an example of how this works. So to start with, the cue for me with my health habit is that the clock strikes 7:30. So that's the trigger, and it's a visual trigger. I see it on the clock. I hear the alarm go off. That's the cue that sets me to want something. So the craving, the want, if you will, is energy. If I really pull it back, at first I put sleep, but what's really behind that is, I want more energy. So the old behavior I filled in there was to press snooze. In fact, I would press it multiple times, maybe 6 times, maybe 7 times, no judgment. But the new behavior is to wake up and go for that run that I committed to develop that habit. And if I do it enough times, maybe it's going to become part of my DNA where I don't even need to think about it anymore. It started to happen for me, so I'm quite excited. And the reward for me around this is I get that energy boost. I thought it would be sleep, but actually being outside and getting that fresh air and moving my body gives me that energy. You could get it in multiple ways through the old behavior or the 2.0 level you. And of course, that big reward for me is that yummy coffee that's waiting for me with oat milk. So that's how that works. And I'm just going to go right into now, as we close out the session, that when you get your PDF that we're going to send to you, so I'm going to send you the tool, what I'd like for you to do is actually complete this cycle at the bottom. So you're going to see it at the bottom of the Habit Builder page. And so you're going to write down for you with the habit that you just created, what is the cue? What's the trigger for you? What is actually underneath it all in terms of the craving? What was the old behavior? What will be the new one? What will be the reward? And all of that together with the belief, the habit plan, and the habit loop or cycle there is really what's going to help to create sustainability. And I know you can do it. And I believe you know that too. So in terms of some great reads, I've mentioned them all the way along. Just really want to honor all of these folks for making me better, giving me the opportunity to be my 2.0 level self. There are so many more. If you have been a participant in any of my workshops before, you know I mention them all the time. So always happy to share more. If anybody has some that they'd like to share in the chat too, I'd really like for you to add that as well. Stephanie, thank you. So the download of the PDF worked well for Stephanie. I just want to highlight, thank you for mentioning that, Stephanie. It was at the top of the chat, the PDF, but we're going to send it out to everybody anyway. So you're going to get the tool. But yeah, so these are just some of my favorites. If anybody else wants to put into the chat what some of your favorite resources are for the 2.0 level you and building better habits, please put them in. And common asked question that I get in the last 2 minutes that we have here is this. So I go to all this trouble in planning it. Hopefully it didn't take too long to plan it because we don't want to over plan. We just want to get going and doing it. So now that I've done that, I try it out, and maybe one day I do it, the next day I don't. And then I do it 3 times and then I don't. And it doesn't become a habit. What then? So for me, what this means is that every day that you made that choice to practice it is a better day. So there's no waste there. So I just want to encourage you and just to applaud yourself every time you choose to do that habit. Good for you. Maybe it'll stay as a decision that you make over and over again, like flossing for me. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. But brushing my teeth is a habit. Maybe if I do it enough, it'll become a habit. But you know what? Every time you do it is a better day. Second point is by James Clear. Improving yourself by 1% today compounds by 1% tomorrow. So we become overall 37 times better in a year. Not bad. And you get very, very good at whatever you practice. So if you choose to practice the old behaviors and the old ways, you get very, very good at that. But if you practice this new habit, you will become very, very good at it. Start small, start with one thing. Here is to the 2.0 level you. I thank you so much. It was so good to reconnect with so many of you and to see new faces as well.